Welcome to Fox Specialist Knowledge Volume 1. In this DVD you're going to follow our team of specialist anglers fishing for bream, barbel, chub, carp and tench at rivers and lakes across the country. It's going to be jam-packed with tips, methods and edges to make sure you get lots more fish on the bank this season. It's the last week of the traditional fishing season, so what better place to be than here on the River Severn at Hampton Load. I've been joined by my good friend and top specimen angler Adrian Eves. I found a nice little swim in here, so I'm going to make my way down the bank and make a start. One of the great things about coming to a new venue for the first time with somebody else is that it allows you to try totally different approaches and swims to see what works best. Now, whilst Adrian is sat in a swim just downstream from where I am, with a nice big feature there and fishing a very much a bait and weight type of approach, I'm going to try and build up more of an open swim with a slightly different type of rig. At the top of the rig, we've actually got a sliding, flying back lead stopped by a float stop, and that will keep the last few feet of line pinned down. Coming down the rig, I've got a big inline maggot feeder, 2 ounces, which should hold the bottom in the swim that we're fishing here. It's got a tail rubber on the back to reduce tangles, and we're going to pack this out with maggots that we've soaked in Richworth salmon oil to give them a bit of an extra kick. I've put a bit of tape around it as well, just to slow the rate that the maggots come out at. In the front of the feeder, semi-fixed, I've got a quick change swivel, and this means on steep banks like we've got here, if I get a fish, I can easily just leave the rod at the bottom and just take the fish up in the net with a hook link, and also if I damage a rig I can quickly change so I'm not wasting time. Below that I've got an anti-tangle sleeve which will just go over the quick change swivel and will help the hook link to stay out of the way of the feeder and reduce any tangles. Moving down the hook link, it's about 3 foot long, and I've actually made it out of the 9.86 pound zig and floater line. Now obviously that's not a material that's designed for this type of fishing, however for presenting a light bait such as maggots that we're using today, it's absolutely perfect, being thin, clear and nice and supple. Halfway down the actual hook link I've got some power grip tungsten putty, and that holds the mono really well and just keeps everything pinned down and out of the way. Moving down to the sharp end of things, I've got a size 12 matrix feeder rigger hook, and you can see I've got something a little bit different going on here. I've actually got an Enterprise Magaliner grub on the hook there, and that will help the hook to turn in the fish's mouth, giving a good hook hold, and it will also disguise the hook quite well. On the bend I've got a couple of maggots for a bit of extra attraction, but even if little fish come along and pull the maggots off the hook, I've still got the attraction of that rubber hook bait, so even if little fish do peck away at it, we've got a usable hook bait as such. Total opposite of what Adrian's doing, so it's going to be interesting to put the 2 rigs side by side and see how it works out on the day. Well, Adrian, this is a little bit different from the rivers that you normally fish up here on the Severn. What's the difference between this type of river and the southern rivers that you'd normally target?
Well, this is much pacier, much bigger than the rivers I'm normally fishing. I'm on the Kennet, the Loddon, those sort of venues, and fishing for a lot fewer fish than we are up here, and things are a much different proposition on venues like this. I haven't fished up here before, so it's sort of suck it and see. I'm fishing with the tactics I would have fished with on my local rivers,
yep.
See how that goes, and then maybe modify them a bit later on.
Okay, how about location? I mean, this is the first time either of us have come to this stretch. What type of spots are you looking for, and do they differ from the type of rivers that you'd normally fish?
On a lot of the venues I'm fishing, there's very few snags overhanging the water. They're much more open venues, so I've come down here, thought this looked like a good fish holding area. Good bit of steady water going under some snags.
Yeah.
Thought it looked like a good area.
Got the flow getting broken up here by the trees upstream as well. So Well, Adrian, you're known for catching very big chub and barbel. I'm keen to see the rigs that do the business for you, so I'm going to ask you to wind that rod in and let's have a look at the rig that does the damage.
There we go. I've gone with a short hook link on here to start with. This is 15-pound Camotex, size 8, Curo S2, and on here we've got a new one bead system.
Okay, and that's gonna sit like so.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I like that, and that allows it to discharge or to lock in place. So there's two different systems you can use for that, I understand.
Absolutely. This one I've set locked in through the top swivel.
Yep.
With a little pin system there.
Pin there, yeah.
But it is quite possible to fish this without the pin and some PVA, so it'll drop off.
I noticed you got a bit of leg call there.
Yes. Yeah. This is something I've done for a long time on the Kennet and the Loddon. It's generally shallower than this. I like to get the rod tap down fairly low, get it all laid out on the bottom to try and avoid any pickups from line bites, that sort of situation.
I guess from an abrasion resistance point of view as well, it stops it. Obviously, if you're coming into contact with any of the debris in the water here when you're playing fish, that would also help as well.
Yeah.
One other thing, moving down to the hook bait. What have we got hiding under this bit of paste? You got is there a boiler or a pellet under there? What are we dealing with?
Slightly trimmed down 14mm Crave dumbbell.
Yep.
Wrapped in a bit of paste there. And this washed off relatively quickly. Send a little bit more flavour down the swim.
So that's the secret rig. Should we get some more paste around there? Get it back in the water and see if you can get yourself one.
Absolutely.
When fishing maggots for bigger fish, it's important to keep a steady trail of bait going into the swim. So what I'm going to be doing is every 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to be reeling in and recasting the feeder. If the rig's out there and the feeder's empty and there's nothing going down through the swim, it'd be really easy for these big fish to soon drift off to another area, maybe where there's more bait going in. So I'm just going to keep it topped up all the time. Not putting loads in, just literally filling a feeder up each time, and that should be more than enough attraction. Now I'm not fishing a long way out here, just an underarm lob. Let a little bit of line out, a little bow in the line which will help the feeder to hold bottom. Pop the free spool facility on, because with barbel a lot of the bites are a real sort of crash bang wallop with the rod going over, and if you're not on the ball and you haven't got the free spool facility on, could be the last time you see your rod.
During my general barbel fishing, I like to use little PVA bags. The more the fish are feeding, the slightly bigger the bag I'd have. But today I'm using this size because the fish aren't really having it at the moment. The weather's been cold, we've got high pressure, so I'm just getting a little bit of added attraction. Varying size of krill pellet, and these are 14mm dumbbell, the Crave boilies. The other thing I like to use for the barbel, I've gone back to using big lumps of luncheon meat or spam, and breaking this down, having ragged sections, little bits break off as it goes down the stream. And again, it's a sort of forgotten bait. 15 years ago everyone was using this. It's gone out of fashion as pastes and boilies have come into fashion, and I think a lot of fish will now turn and pick up this as they were, a dozen years ago. It's good not to be stuck in a rut and keep things changing over, try new baits, try not to get too much of a rut of what you're doing on sections, and try something different that other people on the venues aren't using.
When you're roving about on rivers or still waters, it's really important that we've got luggage that allows us to move quickly and easily. I'll just show you what I've been using. Got all my bait in a bait bucket there. Rods and reels in the 3-rod specialist quiver. Got 3 rods in there, which covers everything I'm likely to need for a quick day session and isn't too big and bulky. I can get a brolly down the central part of this particular quiver, or I can take the feeder arm, which I've been using on the accessory chair, and as well as that I can put landing net poles in there. On the outside we can take bank sticks as well, which obviously pretty much covers everything that we're likely to need. On the back we've got the 40 litre compact specialist rucksack. Takes plenty of everything you're likely to need for a day session. You can put your terminal tackle in there, weigh slings, plenty of lunch, flask, pretty much covers everything. 2 nicely padded straps that are nice and comfortable for long walks as well. And last but not least, I've got the adjuster level accessory chair. There's a few really unique features about this particular chair. Traditionally, low chairs such as these were awkward to carry, you'd have the legs coming out everywhere, or they could be really heavy. This, first and foremost, is a comfortable chair to sit on for a whole day session. As well as that, it's got a really good lightweight frame, which means it's easy to carry from place to place. You can fold your net up and put that inside. It's got the option of a nice padded shoulder strap, but as well as that, it's also got this comfortable strap fitted halfway down, which means it'll easily fit under your arm, so you haven't got loads and loads of straps around your neck. The key thing, however, about this particular product is that all of the matrix accessories fit onto the leg system here. So during this session we've been using ground bait bowls, side trays and even feeder arms. So it's a really, really good, unique chair that means that you can set up in each swim to fish exactly how you need to for that situation. The adjustable legs also mean that you can set up comfortably even on a sloping bank. I've just found this swim, looks a bit tasty to me. I'm going to get in there and get set up. We had a little look earlier on at the tackle that Adrian was using. I've gone for the Royale Specialist Barbel Rod, and in this case I've gone for a 12-foot model. Now the reason that I've done that is we're fishing a fairly large river here, and having a little bit more of the line out the water can actually help. On a smaller water I'll go down to an 11-foot rod. Now they're absolutely perfectly twinned with the 7000 EOS reel, and what I like about this is obviously it's got a free spool facility, which makes it absolutely perfect for the violent bites that you often encounter when fishing for barbel. Bite. Well, we've been building this swim up through the morning, and after a few indications from smaller fish, I've finally hooked something that feels a little bit more substantial. Now, from the way it's plodding around, I'm not convinced that it's a barbel, unless it just hasn't woken up yet, but it feels like a better fish. There's the feeder coming up out the water there. The fish is going past us upstream here. Oh, that's a lovely chub, absolute cracker. Seeing the corner of the mouth there, you can see where the plastic maggot that it fell for is just sat in the corner of its mouth, catching the light on its flanks there. You've always got to be careful with chub because they will always go for one last big dive in under your feet, so I was quite keen to scoop that one up before it tried the usual trick. I've lost a few good ones like that over the years. What I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to pop the hook out, bring it up the bank and we can take a look at it. My swim's a little bit cramped here on the River Severn, so what I've done is brought this fish up to the top of the bank so that we can have a look at it. And what a lovely day it is, almost like a different day up here, to be honest. Well, absolutely stunning fish. I've got a little unhooking mat here, which is really, really important when you're fishing specimen fish, so that you've got some form of protecting them if they're a little bit lively like this one is. What we're going to do, get this lively little fella back in there and get the rig back out there, see if we can get another one. Well, Adrian, you've got the rig back in the swim. Do you want to talk me through the outfit that you're using there?
Yeah, I've got a Dualite FX multi-tip.
Okay.
I've put the solid Avon tip on for this situation. You've obviously got the quiver tips as well that come with this rod, but I felt in this situation that was unnecessary. I've got a 7000 EOS on there, which is loaded with 15-pound Gravitron braid. And
okay, that's a little bit different. I tend to favour mono or fluorocarbon for river fishing. What's the What's the sort of edge that the braided line gives you in your view?
I think I can see a lot more that's going on in the swim, little knocks, taps. Perhaps not so much with the barbel fishing, because still a lot of the bites are around, you know, proper full-on bites, but certainly the sensitivity.
Oh, you're in there. Oh, lovely timing. That looks like a barbel bite to me.
Yep.
Good timing there. So we're just talking about the outfit that Adrian's using there, and he's into a fish. That's the old 3-foot twitch there. There's nothing subtle about barbel bites. And that fish has moved out into the river there, and it's using the flow to its advantage, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's come out of that slack of water. You okay to net that one yourself?
I think so.
Good, good.
There you go.
Lose your net down the river there. Oh, lovely. Fun, even fish of this size, they put up a great scrap, don't they?
They do, yeah. Hopefully.
Lovely, in the net. Well done, my friend. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Lovely barbel.
Yes.
Good scrap as well.
It wasn't bad. For look, the one that really went hard in this flow that the river's got on. We've got a really good hook hold here. Just in there, just going to pop out with a bit of luck. There we go.
Well, proof of the rigs. Rigs and baits certainly working.
Yep.
Now I'll just put that
Pop
out
that
of the
over
way
there.
for you so that we don't trip over it in a minute.
Lovely.
Let's pick that fish up and let's have a little look at that one.
Only a little one, but how about that, eh?
I'll tell you what though, for people who are looking to try barbel fishing for the first time, up here on the Severn, there's plenty of fish of this size, and there's good fish as well, much bigger fish. This stretch produces now a good number of double-figure fish each season. So a great place maybe to come and catch your first barbel,
Absolutely,
to learn a bit about them, and hopefully get your first big one as well.
Yeah, and they really hang on, don't they?
What a great start.
Thank you very much. Lovely.
Got the rig back in the water. Let's have a look at my 3 favourite barbel baits. We're going to start with something fairly traditional, that being meat. Although as opposed to traditional luncheon meat, I quite like the pepperami type products. They're really nice, spicy, full of fat, salt, chilli, all the things that barbel and most other coarse fish really like. They're also a great convenience bait because they're long life. You can put a few of these in your rucksack and you've always got a little bit of bait there. As with fishing for many big fish, boilies play an important part as well. Obviously really resilient to attacks from small fish and are a good bait to leave out when you need to keep the bait in the water for a bit longer. These are my favoured boilie for barbel and chub fishing. That's the Richworth Extractor. 14mm, got a lovely fishy, spicy flavour, and colour wise a little bit lighter than a lot of other baits out there, and it looks a lot like a sort of washed out pellet. Probably feels a lot safer to fish that see a fair bit of bait. Now we can't really talk about barbel baits without talking about pellets, and I'd never really go out without a few 8, 10 and 12mm pre-drilled halibut pellets. Absolutely deadly hook bait, especially fish with a little PVA bag of mixed size pellets. One little thing that I always do is take a bit of matching paste. This is extractor paste, comes as a frozen product, and you can wrap any bait up in it. In this case, 14mm extractor boilie. Simply mould it round to create a much bigger hook bait, which is good in floodwater conditions, or just enough to create a second skin like so. And over time in the water, this will break down, pumping out lots of attraction, full of lots of liquid foods and lots of other goodies that are bound to bring those barbel to your hook bait. Well, we've come to the end of our session here on the River Severn. How have you found it today?
Yeah, well, the river's been in nice condition, but the weather's been very mixed, unfortunately. We've had really cold nights, high pressure, and I think it's put the fish off the feed a bit. But we've tried a few different tactics, we've moved about. I think it's gone okay in the circumstances.
Okay, and best of all, we've got a few bites, we've got a few
Yep.
fish on the bank, and I've really enjoyed exploring the water. We found a lot of swims, tried different approaches. A few of them have paid off, and I think if we came here again, we'd have a really, really good head start. Well, just because the river season's coming to an end, it doesn't mean that our fishing will, and I'm looking forward to checking out some great still water opportunities over the coming months. Well, after that tough day on the River Severn, I was looking forward to a real bag up session. And on the grapevine, I heard about a place called Ferry Meadows, a park lake in Peterborough, apparently absolutely stuffed to the rafters with bream. With the river season behind us, you join us today here at Ferry Meadows, a still water near Peterborough. It's actually joined to the River Nene, which is something that we'll come on to later on, and it offers great sport for bream as well as other species. Really good value open access fishing at £24 for a season or only £5 for a day on a Peterborough and District Angling Association ticket. I'm going to have a wander round, choose a peg and make a start. Well, I've had a little look around the fishery, and one peg that's really caught my eye is peg 8 here on Overton Lake. Now, I've had a little tip off that there's been some good bream caught in this area over the last few days, and obviously that's a really, really good head start. Now, I've been watching the water surface, I've seen a few signs of fish moving out there as well. Put on a feeder with no hook link, had a little cast around, and at about 50 yards there's a nice clear area, and this seems a perfect area to lay a banquet to attract a big old shoal of bream. Let's make a start. There's lots of different approaches you can use when targeting bream, and today I'm going to show you my favourite. It's all based around this, the Evolution method feeder. It's a flatbed style feeder, and at the back of it we've got a tail rubber, and that reduces tangles when we're actually fishing. And the unique feature with this particular model, if we take the tail rubber off the top, is it actually has a little slit in the plastic there, which means that we can actually take the line out and swap them over to either a bigger or smaller one to suit the fishing situation on the day. Underneath we've got the lead, which means that it always sits up the right way on the bottom, presenting the hook bait absolutely perfectly. We're using a little 4-inch matrix hook link. We've got the hook balanced to the size of the bait that we're using, in this case a size 12, and it's tied using a knotless knot. And underneath the hook bait here you can see we've got one of the super stops, and this makes it nice and easy to actually change hook baits during the session. Now, before I load this feeder up and get it out there, I'm going to talk you through my favourite bream ground bait mix. There's two things that I like in a mix when I'm fishing for bream, and that's a fish meal base and plenty of fruity sweet flavours as well. That combination seems to really, really attract them in good numbers. I'm using a method mix here, and it's really important that you use this type of mix when you're using one of these feeders, so it's the correct texture to actually stick to the feeder and present itself correctly, staying on the feeder until it's actually on the lake bed. If we actually start to have a look in there, you can see there's lots and lots of little food items that will keep them sniffing around. We've got pellets up to 4 mil in size, Accelerate and KG1. We've got some hemp, we've got some crushed boilies, loads and loads of interest there, lots of flavour that's going to come out into the swim and draw them in. I've used this mix for quite a while now, and it's worked really, really well for me. To actually load it onto the feeder itself, we need the mould, and it's really important that you check that you've got the same size mould as the feeder. So in this case we're using a large feeder, large mould. So you get the ground bait and you just fill it until it's parallel with the top of the feeder. So if you slightly overfill it, you can just brush it away like so. Once it's full, all you need to do is get your method feeder and just lay it into the top of the mould like so. just apply a little bit of downward pressure with your thumbs, turn it over, and you just give it a squeeze on the soft plastic on the top there, and there we have it. We've got a perfect little ball of attraction there, and sat no more than a couple inches away is our hook bait that will be presented perfectly. Now, when you're watching fishing DVDs or reading an article, it can often seem like anglers often say, I've caught right from the off, and that was literally within 20 seconds of the feeder hitting the bottom, no exaggeration, which just goes to show that a little bit of planning with your fishing when you're after bream, whether it's putting a little bit of bait in advance, whether that be the night before or on the morning that you're going to be fishing, getting to the swim, putting a little bit of bait in and then preparing your ground bait can often be all it needs to get them in the swim. And it's woken up. Now we've got it in shallow water. He's obviously realised that something's amiss. And whilst he's never going to be the most hard fighting fish that I'm ever going to catch, on a spring morning here at Ferry Meadows, he's very, very welcome. It's in the net and we're off the mark. What a great start. In the early morning light here at Ferry Meadows, let's have a look at this lovely bream. I'd say this fish is about 6.5 pounds. Nice high shoulders, lovely colours. And do you know what? For a bream, it didn't put up a bad scrap either. Being a shoal fish though, hopefully there's a few more out there. So for now we're going to get this one back, get the rod in the water and see if we can get another one. It's really important that we keep the bream interested in the area that we're fishing. So at the start of the day, I've put the feeder out 12 times with no hook bait on there at all, just to get some interest in the area, a bit of bait on the bottom. Now during the day, I'm going to be regularly recasting, and that'll mean that we're just topping up and allowing for any food that's eaten either by the bream or other fish in the area. Now when we're fishing for a shoal fish like bream, this is absolutely vital. If they eat everything that's out there, they're going to disappear either to the guy in the next peg or to feed on natural food. So it's absolutely vital that we just keep topping up through the day. The spot that I'm fishing today is about 50 yards out. And when we're casting out that far, we're going to have undertow going across the swim, and also got a few things floating on the surface here, a bit of blossom that's come off the tree. And it's really important that we sink the line down so that it doesn't pick up on anything on the surface, and also to prevent any line bites. So once we cast out, it's just a case of keeping the tip down nice and low and just gently pulling the line back just to get it through the surface tension. Once it's there, we can just come back and get the bobbin clipped up. Now, not only will this make sure that we don't have loads of line out in a big bow, as well as that, it'll also prevent line bites. So it's a really, really important part of fishing, not only for bream, but any ledge ring at a reasonable distance. Well, when you're bream fishing, sometimes it can be difficult to tell what's a line bite and what's actually a fish picking the bait up. But that looks to me like there's a fish on, and there is. Ill prepared as ever. My landing net's over here, so I have to shuffle my way around, being careful to keep the line tight as well so that I don't drop the fish. We'll make our way out into the shallows of Ferry Meadows for the second time today to hopefully land a fish. Feel the characteristic head shake there of a good sized bream. Well, the key thing that I'm picking up on already here this morning at Ferry Meadows is bream are a shoal fish, and if you keep the feed going in, they'll keep feeding. If a shoal's feeding confidently, you can pick the odd fish off without them noticing and catch steadily, as we have from the off this morning. However, if you're just firing out a single feeder or float fishing over the top and not adding to the bait in the swim, they're going to clear you out and go and look for somewhere where there's more available food. They're all very, very welcome fish. And it's interesting how they fight in this clear water, maybe a little bit harder than in murky water. You can see where they're going and they're making the most of it. Nice dark bream. Well, I've got one in the net here, and I'm fishing 2 rods, trying to maximise my chances. And would you believe it, the bobbin's pulled up tight on the other rod, and as it stands, we've got no rods in the water because we've got one in the net and one on the end. Now, if there's one thing that I've learnt about big bream, it's that they don't tend to come too close to the bank. You're really looking beyond the marginal shelf, and on a venue like this, which is relatively shallow, by casting around with a lead or a feeder, you're looking for relatively clear areas with a decent depth of water. Now, where I'm fishing out, about 45 yards, 7.5 foot, onto a clear sandy bottom, there is a little bit of silkweed out there, and I'm not a big fan of fishing in weed for bream. They're not confident feeders in the weed like a tench or a carp would be. So I'm looking for clearer areas, and that's what we found out there just by casting around at the start of the day. And it seems that by putting a bit of bait out there at the start of the day, it's really holding the fish. Oh, the little one's out, big one's in. It's not the end of the world, is it? The smaller one actually escaped from the net, and it left us with this old warrior. He's about 4.5, 5 pounds. It proves that the methods and tactics are working. I'm really keen to get the rods back out there because we're having a really, really good day so far. Well, we're having a great day here. It's fish after fish at the moment. And whilst they're a good average size, it'd be great if we can see if we can get a bigger one. Well, that's the biggest one of the day so far, 8.5 pounds, and for a bream, put up a fair old scrap as well, so I'm really happy with that one. There's a lot of action in the swim at the moment, so I'm going to get the rods back out there and try and capitalise on the action. Middle part of the day now, and for the last hour, maybe even an hour and a half, the lake's gone very, very quiet, and I think that's to do with a big change in the light levels, and that can very often put the fish off the feed a little bit. And I'm starting to think about a bit of a change of tactics, maybe even going across to possibly an open end feeder, fished on a leg clip. However, just as I was trying to make my mind up as to what to do, the rod's screamed into life again. We've got another fish on the end, so there's still a few out there. I'm not convinced there's as many there as before. Could be a case of maybe topping the swim up again, getting a bit more feed out there. But I'm willing to ring the changes to find what works on the day. it's in the net and it looks like another good one. Well, as you can see, it's the middle of the day, bright sunshine and probably not the best fishing conditions. However, by continually working at the swim, recasting, this is a reward. Biggest fish of the day so far at £8.10. Stunning fish. I'm absolutely amazed about this place. Only £5 a day, £24 a year. An absolute bargain to come and catch fish like this. Whatever style of fishing you're doing, it's really important that the tackle is balanced. And today I'm using the 12-foot Duolite FX twin tip rod. And this rod actually comes with two tips, a 1 3/4 and a 2 1/4. So that covers lots of different situations. Now fishing between 50 and 60 yards like I am today, I've gone for the 1 3/4 tips. And that's got a nice combination of power to get these method feeders out there, but enough give in the tip, which means I can get away with quite light hook links. With regards to reels, we've gone for the EOS 7000, which has got a freeze fall facility and is perfectly twinned with these rods. It's really useful to be able to release the spool to allow the fish to take line when we're fishing in case a bigger fish, such as a carp or a tench, should pick the bait up and scream off. And this is perfectly balanced to 10-pound mainline. Balanced tackle is an absolute pleasure to use, and whilst bream aren't the hardest fighting fish, with this type of gear we can have plenty of fun with these good sized fish. What a great end to what's been a great day's sport. Well, that was just the bag up session that I needed. There's lots of other species to fish for during the spring as well, carp being one of them. So now I'm going to hand over to my old mate Steve Spurgeon as he tackles a typical modern day ticket carp water.
Well, it hasn't taken long and I'm into my first chestnut pool carp of the day. So fingers crossed I'll get this one in the net. What I've done is I've baited along the margin of the island out there. I've got them positioned both tightly to it and the fish are clearly out there. Actually get one in the net, mate. Well, it's putting up a good account of itself. I don't think it's a big one, but it's certainly having a good old go. Here we go. Oh, this is mad. Just cast that one out. It's hit the water, couldn't have been in more than a couple of seconds. I can't even believe the PVA's melted. It must have just gone in and attacked the bag. Didn't get a chance to even put the rod down, and I think, looking at it, I might even have one on my other rod as well. I think there's one on that one as well. Bit of clutch action. You can see in the net as well. Well, there you go, just seen me have that hectic little spell. It's a nice little mirror there, probably about £10. Nice one. So I'm going to put it back, talk you through some of the tackle I'm using. Well, despite what you may think, you don't need complicated rigs to catch carp. All the fish I'm catching today are on a very simple setup, and I'm going to talk you through it, how it all goes together and the components I'm using. Starting off with, I've got about 12 to 14 inches of trans-khaki anti-tangle tubing. Now firstly, the tubing will protect the fish during the fight to stop the line rubbing up and down its flank. Secondly, it will cut down on tangles. The reason it does this is it stops your hook length wrapping up around your main line. So one thing you need to remember is always make sure that your tubing is longer than the hook length you're using. And moving on from that, I've got angled run kit here. Now I've already attached the lead. That attaches via a little T-peg, very simple. Next is the tapered tulip bead, which all comes part of the angled run rig kit. Then slide your main line up through the taper end. That then goes down to there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie my hook length on, which is a standard ready rig, size 8 barblist to comply with the fishery rules. Very simple. Now, tie your main line to the end of the swivel. I'm going to use a grinner knot to do this because it's my preferred knot. So let's get that tied. Now with all your knots, always make sure you wet them down nicely and take your time, just button it all up together so you get a nice neat knot and no line damage. So that's that. Cut away the tag end. Now your angled tulip bead slides back down over the swivel like so, so it locks that into place. Then what I'll do is going to wet the end of the anti-tangle tubing, which I've cut at a slight point there, which makes it easier then to push in to the tapered end of the tulip bead. So that then locks that in place. So as you can see, your angled run clip sits up nicely against that angled tulip bead, giving you a very nice aerodynamic finish. Now all you need to do from there is attach your bait. Now I'm using various options on the bait today and seem to be catching on most. Well, I've got one little 10mm bread flake flavoured boilie there and a 10mm hybrid. So I'm going to push them down onto the hair like so. Now in with the ready rigs, you get a little sprue of extender stops like so. Now I'm using the smallest one that you get on there, which seems to be about the right length for once the baits are sitting on the hair and completed. So you slide that on like so, and then that top bait pulls into there. There we go, let's just get that inside. It's quite a tough bait. There we go, that's in there. I'm just going to move that silicone down a little bit further towards the bend, and you can see the hook baits, the bottom one sitting around towards the bottom of the bend there, which is absolutely ideal. So that's the setup I'm using, and all I'm doing to that is attaching a small PVA bag of pellet, maybe a few little mixed boilies in there as well, and just keep feeding. So there you go, let's get this back out in the water. Okay, so if you're thinking of having a go at carp fishing, let's have a look at some of the kit you'll need to get you started. Starting off with the rods. These are Warrior S rods, 2 3/4 pound test curve, ideally suited for any size venue. Being a 2 3/4, they're nice for playing fish under the tip. They've also got enough power. If you want to use PVA bags, etc., you'll get out to any distance you want, no problem at all. The reels I'm using are the new EOS 10,000s. They've got a good size spool capacity, so you can get plenty of line on those. They're a reasonable size, so you've got plenty of cranking power as well. They have a free spool facility, so when you get that bite, you can just pick the rod up, turn the reel handle, and you're into your fish. It will disengage and you're playing your fish. I've got a rod pod here. This comes supplied with 2 rod and 3 rod buzz bar options. Again, these are great. Any of these sort of commercial venues, sometimes you have sort of stagings, even concrete platforms, etc. And with a pod, it's very simple to move quickly if you do want to move swim. So again, very good little bit of kit. The alarms I'm using, the little MX alarms. You've got volume control on these, sensitivity. You've also got tone there, so you can differentiate between you know, what alarm's got your bite. Bobbins are just standard little bobbins. The reason I'm using these is I'm fishing tight to the island, so you're more than likely, if you get an occurrence, it's going to drop back, and obviously that weight of that bobbin will indicate my bite. If that wasn't on there, my alarm would go slack and the alarm wouldn't register. So there you go, an ideal little setup to get you started. Well, there we go, another one. Well, this really is manic. It's great fun and I'm enjoying myself. Well, I'm really impressed with this reel. I've used the 7,000 versions and they're absolutely lovely. This is the first time out with these new 10s, and the combination of the rod and reel together is absolutely spot on. These reels, I'm really impressed with these, the new 10,000. I've used the 7,000 version, I absolutely love those. But coupled with the Warrior rod, it's absolutely spot on. And for 50 quid, can't argue with that. As I've said before, I'm using PVA bags, little mesh bags. And I'm going to make one up now and show you how to do it. Now, PVA itself, once it comes into contact with water, it melts. So what I'm achieving by attaching one of these is a nice little pile of pellet right next to my hook bait. So you start off with a knot in the end of your system like so. You don't need loads of pellet, just a small amount like so. It's probably about the size of a 50p piece, something like that in diameter. You just bunch the pellet up into the end of the bag. I'll give it a little twist, and then all you're going to do is just form a little overhand knot in the top of it, nice and tight, so it forms a little parcel like that. We put another knot in with a small gap in between, like so. You cut in between there. You can pull your PVA back onto your tube and you're ready for the next one. And then to attach it, it's just simply a matter of hooking into the bag. I tend to stay away from the knot so you don't get any build up of PVA. Then I'll twist it again, hook it under again, and there you have it. Ready to go, ready to cast out into the lake. And as I said, that's going to melt and give me loads of attraction right around my hook bait. Brilliant. I'm priming up a little spot down the margin here. On these sort of commercial lakes, often at the end of matches, etc., a lot of the bait gets thrown in the edge, and the big fish seem to know this. So, although it can be quite quiet down there, it seems that the big fish often will be up and down these margins. So, I've been priming this little spot. I'm going to get a rod on it. Well, it went a bit quiet out on the island. Probably for about an hour I didn't get a bite, so I've been baiting the spot up in open water. I put a bait on that and it's probably only been out there 5 minutes, so the fish are obviously there and feeding on it. So it just goes to show you it pays to bait more than one spot. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, there you go. Right, last knockings, end of the day, and the margin rod's gone off and it's shot straight out into open water. It certainly seems to be fighting harder than some of the others. So yeah, hopefully this is slightly better. It's certainly having a go. It's staying a little bit deeper at times. It looks a better fish, this one. Come on, come to Daddy. There we go. She's in, and that is a better one. Well, there you go. It's the end of the day, packing away, and the margin rod will produce this nice double. So it just goes to show you the tactics I've used are very simple, but they've worked. And if you employ the same sort of tactics, I'm sure you'll have the same sort of success as I've had today. So hopefully I'll see you in the bank soon.
You join Adrian and I at Linear Fisheries in Oxfordshire, one of the most famous day ticket fisheries in the country. Lots of lakes here to choose from, very famous for their carp. However, today it's the tench we're after, and we're going to use two very, very different approaches. I'm going to be sneaking around the edge, seeing if I can find those little tinkers in the margin. Adrian, what are you going for?
I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to find some features in a swim, look on the end of the wind, see if the fish will come to me, bait fairly heavily for them, see how that works.
Two totally different methods. It's going to be an interesting one. Should we make a start?
Let's
do it. Well, it just goes to show that by changing the perspective of where you're standing, sometimes you can see a lot more of what's going on in the water. It's those little edges, finding the fish before you start, that go a long way to building a successful session. I've come down into a little corner bay here on Manor Farm Lake at Linear, and by climbing up on this old stump, using the polarised glasses, I can make out the dark shapes of some big old tench mooching around. We've got some weed out in front and a few gravel areas which look like places where the fish have been feeding. And that's given me a really, really good start. I think I'm going to rush back, get the barrow loaded up and get the rods out. After having a good look around the lake, I've chosen on this swim as my base camp for the first part of the session. I can see out in front there's a couple of gravel bars which will be great features to target later on in the day. However, just down to my left we've got that lovely little bay where we've already seen some tench moving, and I think that'll offer a great stalking opportunity for some proactive fishing during the day. Before I go and put the rods in, I'm just going to show you exactly what it is that I use for my tench fishing. Mainline is usually 10 or 12 pound aquas. That might sound quite heavy, but a lot of these gravel pits have lots of weed. You've got the gravel itself, which is quite rough, and we're fishing for big fish, casting heavy leads or feeders. So it's important that we've got a strong mainline that's up to the job. I always use a flying back lead, and the reason that I do that is tench are primarily a bottom feeding fish, and it's really important that everything's pinned down and out the way so that we don't spook the fish. For my next trick, I've borrowed something from the carp anglers, and that's about 3 foot of leg core leader. This is something that you can either make up yourself or buy a ready-made pattern, and the advantage of this heavy weighted line is it keeps everything pinned down and out of the way. In this case, I've chosen to use a 2-ounce inline lead. Now this will allow me to get the rig out to where I want, and as well as that, it will provide a self-hooking element. Now when we're fishing at quite long range, into deep water, or fishing at night, it's really important that we've got a rig that actually hooks the fish for us. We don't need to be setting the hook. And I find these little leads are absolutely perfect. And being square, they don't roll at all. They'll sit on the side of the bars, just where we want them. And in the front of that, I've got a quick change swivel. And that allows me just to change presentations really, really quickly when I'm out there on the bank. Moving down from there, I've got my hook length. And the first thing you probably notice is it's very, very short. And again, that fits with the self-hooking element of this type of setup. Now, tench are a very careful feeder, and if you've got a clumsy presentation, they'll suck it in and spit it out and get away with it. And that's where the short hook link and heavy lead really comes into its own. Now, this particular hook link is tied from 8-pound reflex, which is a prototype sinking braid that I've been using for a little while. And if I'm fishing in really snaggy waters or where there's bigger fish, I'll sometimes go up to 12 pounds. I've got a little figure of 8 loop, which sits at the top of the link, and this allows me to quickly change back and forth between various rigs. and I've cut down a tapered sleeve which will sit over the quick change swivel to make sure that everything sits nice and neat and reduces any tangles. Onto the hook link I've threaded a little PVA bag, and this serves a couple of purposes. Inside there I've got some dry ground bait mixed with casters, and when this hits the bottom, not only is the point of the hook protected by it being actually inside the PVA bag, but it also will explode and you get lots of particles come up in the water column and settle back down and leave a little pile of casters, which are one of the tench's favourite food. The hook itself is a size 10 SSSP, which is a small, very strong carp hook, which is perfect for fishing for big tench. On the back of the hook there, I've got 3 imitation casters. These are the buoyant models, and they'll just sit up and the hook will sit just touching the bottom, and when a tench sucks at it, it will fly in and you'll get a really good hook hold with that type of neutral buoyancy setup. Well, that's the theory. Let's get one of these clipped on, creep back into that little bay and see if those tench are still about. When I got back round into this swim with a tackle, I got back up onto these old stumps and had a look into the water. And there was a few tench milling around, and there was a couple clear spots that you could see really clearly on the bottom, and I decided they would be great places to position my bait. Now the reason for that is the area around it is quite weedy, and it can be hard to present a bait correctly in a weedy swim. So what I've done is just underarm the rigs out onto the little clear patches, let them settle on there. I've actually fished with quite a slack line, which isn't something I'd normally do when I was tench fishing, but I'm fishing at such close range I just want everything laying down out of the way, so there's absolutely no reason for these fish to spook. Talking quite quietly as well, because we're literally fishing maybe 2 rod lengths out, so no distance at all. Now the wind's picked up a little bit. This means I can't quite see what's going on in the swim now. The waves and the shadow are making it a little bit awkward to see through the surface and see the fish down there. However, it's blowing down into this corner. It's quite mild conditions. Everything's right for a bite, so we're sitting here crossing everything that a tench makes a mistake. Well, I have to admit it, I was nodding off there when that alarm screamed into life and woke me from my slumber. I'm pleased it did. I was dreaming of big tench, and I'm hoping that's what's on the end. This one's powering off out the bay. Anyone who thinks that it's only carp that fight clearly hasn't caught a good sized tench, and this feels like a good fish. We weren't in the water too long at all before we got a bite. I'm presuming this is a tench. Saw a nice olivey flank out in the water there. Look at that, you'd think he'd be beaten, but he's still powering away there. One more little roll and he's in the nets. Well, that's a great start. Like I say, we've not been here that long. Got a fish in the net already. Cheeky little bit of stalking down in the back bay here, and we're off the mark. Well, here's my prize for a bit of cheeky stalking in the edge, and what a prize it is. Absolutely stunning male tench. Now, when people think about fisheries such as linear, they think obviously about big carp, but all that bait going in, all those boilies, all those pellets, grow some absolutely monstrous fish of other species. And this is actually one of my favourite places to come at this time of year, fishing for big old tench like this. Now this one, it's about £8 this one, really, really good fish. Believe it or not, these lakes produce tench of over £12. There's some absolute monsters here, but it's not all about size. There's plenty of them, and with that in mind, I'm going to try and get my rig back in and see if there's another one waiting for me.
Okay, that's dead on the money there. I've lined up with that group of trees on the horizon, just sinking the line now. That's going down an 11-foot bar. It's quite clear, little tiny bit of weed here and there. This looks like it's going to be a really good spot because what we've got already is fish showing over the area. I think they're carp, may have seen a tench earlier. Let's hope there's some tench. Okay, right, found a lovely swim, found some really good features in the swim. So what I'm going to do now is run through the bait I'll be introducing in over the spots I've discovered. Then I'll be moving on to the rigs and hook baits that I'll be fishing over those areas. So to begin with, what I've got is a good selection of different size krill pellets. I think the fish like these because they're very salty and they're a little bit different from the high oil pellets that have been very popular over the last few years. Now to that, what I'm doing is adding some CSL or corn steep liquor. There's loads of amino acids and sugars in this to get the carp and the tench really feeding. Works for all sorts of species. I've been using this a lot of years now. Now I have changed the pellet over the last couple of years. I've changed from high oil pellets, which were very popular, but I feel the krill pellets have now got the edge over those. So I'll also be introducing a little bit of corn into that mix. That gives me the option to use different hook baits if the maggot and worm approach, which I'm going in with, needs a little bit of a change. Mixed up a reasonable amount of this because what I'll be doing is spomming out about 20 loads of the mixed pellet and corn, and then probably another 10 or 15 of both caster, and I prefer red maggot with a few colours in amongst them.
There's one thing that attracts tench, it's noise, and that's why I like quite heavy baits like hemp and pellet. When they hit the top, it definitely draws tench in to investigate the potential food source. Now the mix that I'm putting in is hemp, pellet, red maggots and casters. I've mixed them all up. I've put a little bit of sweet plex flavour in there, which is my favourite tench attractor, and I'm going to top the swim up with a few more handfuls. When you're fishing for tench, never be afraid to put quite a bit of bait in. They feed on all different types of baits. You can catch them on everything from bread, luncheon meat, sweet corn, and normally a good few handfuls to kickstart the swim, and don't be afraid to top up when there's signs of activity in the area. Well, we topped up the swim and I said there was a few feeding in here, and it proved that there was. Another absolutely screaming take. These gravel pit tench, they don't hang around. Doesn't want to come up over the shelf. They don't want to come into that shallow water. It's not a natural place for them to be in the edge. Second one in the bag, been here about 2.5 hours now. I'm absolutely over the moon with this result. Just goes to show it's not all about long chuck and heavy baiting. We're fishing in the edge, a few handfuls of bait, watching what happens and reaping the rewards. Well, for the second time today, I've got my hands full of absolutely stunning male tench. Not quite so big this one, but no complaints on my part. Just goes to show that on gravel pits or anywhere where there's clear water, you can always make a chance by sneaking around and actually spotting the fish instead of fishing blind. Proactive fishing scores again. If I could choose two baits for fishing for tench, it would be casters and red maggots. They've probably caught more tench for me than any other baits combined. Now I'm going to show you the two slightly different rigs that I'm using today. Firstly, my caster rig. Now the first thing that you'll notice is these casters look ever so slightly different, and the reason for that is that they're not real casters, they're artificial floating casters. And the reason that I use artificial baits a lot when I'm fishing for big tench is most waters that hold tench hold lots of roach, rudd, small perch and other fish that would nibble away at live baits such as maggots or casters, worms, anything else like that, and peck away at them until there's nothing left. Now when we're casting the baits out and leaving them there for a little while, that's the last thing that we want. So artificial baits solve those problems. Now the way that I've got it presented is, first and foremost, I've got the hook, which is a size 10 SSSP, which is absolutely perfect, heavy duty pattern that will handle tench, any big bream or bonus carp that come along. So that's absolutely perfect for this presentation. So at the sharp end of things, we've got 3 buoyant rubber casters. And the way that I've rigged these is, firstly, I've used 3 different colours for a bit of extra attraction, and I've tied a knotless knot, threaded them on, and then with the hair poked it back through the eye of the hook, and being very careful using a lighter to melt the braid back into a little blob that holds everything in place. Now, the way that that sits on the bottom is really important too, and it will actually just hover with the hook barely touching the bottom and the casters sat upright, and that means that when a tench takes the bait, it flies back and we get a really good hook hold, and that obviously really helps as well. I've mentioned red maggots a few times today. Absolutely cracking bait for tench of all sizes, and my other rig is based around that. I've done exactly the same knotless knot, only this time I've threaded on 2 artificial floating maggots, pushed the line back through the hook, and again, being very careful, melted it back into a blob to hold it in place. Again, this will sit with the hook barely touching the bottom, the maggots enticingly waving in the water there in any undertow or anything else like that, and the tench can't resist it. 2 dead simple presentations that have caught me lots and lots of big tench. Give them a go, and I'm sure you'll catch a few yourself this year.
How about that? Early one. That's a result. Wasn't really expecting one quite this quickly, but that'll do for me. That's just come on the margin rod, so that's nice. Proves they're coming to, even with all the disturbance, the fish will come in the edge even when you're... There we go. I don't think it's a big fish, but still, very welcome. Net. Yeah, just a small fish, just rolled over the line a bit there. That's it. Just kick through. Well, it's a small fish, but that's really giving a good account of itself for its size.
Say that line again.
It's giving a really good account of itself for its size. Got to be happy with that. That's a very good start. It's always nice to get an early fish. You can relax a bit then. There we go. This time straight to the net. There we go. Excellent, excellent, brilliant. We're just coming into the evening, and how about that? Caught one. Not a very big one to start with, but it's a good start. And this time of day, as light falls, is often a brilliant time to start catching a few fish. I'm hopeful that they'll carry on feeding throughout the session, and we'll get a few more tomorrow morning. I think what we'll do now is move on to the rigs and the hook baits I'll be using to start with. I'll see how things go through the session. If I think they need changing, I'll change them. So to start with, this first rod, the setup here is again the setup here is 1 metre of 30-pound submerged leader, which is lead free. Then I've got a large ring swivel with a quick change setting on that, attaching the feeder. Then what we've got is an angled bead, so as it sits down, it just kicks the hook link away a little bit from the feeder to help avoid any tangles when we're casting out. Under this bit of tubing here, we have another quick link, so I can change hook links if they become damaged, or I want a longer or shorter link on there. And that's just tied to a size 10 Curo S2. So that one's done. We'll leave that there for a moment. I'll get the other rod. Now I've done something a little bit different on this one. I've gone from a running lead to a helicopter setup. Although the spot I'm fishing out is fairly clear, this does give me the option to fish in if there's a little tiny bit of weed in over the baited area, and the bait would be more inclined to sit down over some light weed cover. I'll put this on about 1 metre of 30-pound submerged, which is lead free sinking material, so it'll hug the contours of the lake bed. To the end of this I've got a quick change link, and again obviously a fairly large cage feeder. Now with this I can quickly remove it, so if I need to fish further out or closer in, I can change the size and the weight of the feeder very simply. Coming to the hook link, what we've got here is about 5 inches of Camatex in the dark, and a size 10 Curo S1 with a shortish hair on that, with a piece of real corn and one piece of buoyant fake corn sitting above. So as it sits in the lake, I'm hoping to get that sort of presentation on the lake bed. The reason I am using cage feeders and the method mix in there is it gives an excellent conduit to get the live bait, whether it be the chopped worm or the maggot that I'll be adding to this, out onto the lake bed. There's also crushed hemp in this particular mix, so what that does is a few particles will come up off the lake bed, hopefully really getting the fish in tight to the hook bait area. And this is a method that's worked really well for me in the past, so hopefully this session will be no different.
Well, if there's one thing that Oxford tench get 0 out of 10 for, it's subtlety. This one's almost had the rod out the rest on the take, and now it's running me ragged all over the lake. Big head shakes there, and rather strangely, the first thing it did is actually try and go around the corner into about a foot of water, which was strange behaviour. But now it's gone back out into the deeper water. It's in a deeper channel between the bars now, and you can see these big old thumps to the head, and that's when it's quite easy to lose them. You need your clutch set nice and smooth to give line. On these EOS 7000s, the clutches are spot on these, so you can put total faith in them, even when you're fishing for relatively big fish on lighter tackle. Third one of the day in the bag, the sun's back out, life doesn't get much better. I don't know if I've ever seen a better looking tench than this one. It's an absolutely stunning fish. Lovely broad shoulders on it, and they've got the loveliest little heads with a gorgeous golden eye there. Stunning fish, absolutely stunning. Now, tench are a very social creature, so whether you see one swimming along the margin or whether you're catching a few like we are today, it pays to stay in the area, because the others normally won't be far away, and even more so at this time of year. It's late spring now, they're thinking about spawning, so they're starting to get into really big groups, and that's the times when you can really bag up on fish like this. Mate.
Alright, how's it going then?
Good.
Yeah.
I've had a great session, I've got to say.
Yeah.
Been over on Manor, found some fish feeding in the bay there. A little bit of up close and personal tench fishing there. Really, really good fun. My style of fishing. How about you?
Well, I have to say, I've been a bit mixed here. The technique did work. I've got a lot of fish feeding. Initially had some tench showing. I caught a tench, and then the carp really moved in.
Okay.
And I think they were just clearing the bait all the time. I carried on fishing here because I was hoping that as the weather warmed up, the carp would come to the top and wander off and leave the tench there. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have worked this time.
Best laid plans and all that, best laid plans.
I'm afraid so, yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've seen two totally different approaches to tench fishing, both of which have their day and are well worth trying on the waters that you fish. Well, that brings us to the end of Specialist Knowledge Volume 1. I hope you can take away lots of tips, tactics and edges that we've shown you and incorporate them into your own fishing, and we hope to see you on the bank again soon.